just caption this, but we're going to talk today about how to negotiate a higher salary. So let me just adjust this. Negotiate. There we go. All right. So that will all match up here as well. So let's talk about this today because this is a question that has been coming up several times in the last couple of weeks with my clients around this subject. And we're getting to that point of the year where performance reviews are coming up. There is, of course, that whole shuffle around the promotion rounds maybe coming up within your organization. So this is the time to start thinking about your compensation and about your salary. So if you're in this position and you might be a woman who is experiencing this thought of like, oh, how do I even approach the conversation around compensation and around my salary? Or what I've heard a lot of is like, well, I don't really need any more money. So I don't really, should I even bother with a conversation around salary, etc. So if any of that sounds familiar, then this is going to be it for you today, because we're going to talk about a couple of the mistakes that I see that are being made, as well as the process that you can take in order to start negotiating your salary. Now, here's one thing I also want to invite you to is I'm going to share it today, but on this live video, it's a little more difficult to do Q&A. So join me on Friday for a second part to the how to negotiate a higher salary, where you can jump on with me on a LinkedIn audio event and you can directly ask me your questions, even how to phrase it, etc. And we can work it out together from there. All right, so let's really dig into this. So when it comes to your salary, there's a couple of things that I have seen happen quite a bit. So where a lot of women, regardless of your position, you find yourself, you're taking on a lot of extra work. You might have found yourself with, which is a really great thing, right? You might be praised and being congratulated on doing a job well done. You might even be getting extra projects or stretch assignments, and your promotions or that salary, the compensation hasn't changed any. I even had a client of mine who had been promoted into an executive role and then was told, well, you need to do this role first for a year. And then once you've proven that you can do it, we'll talk about your compensation at that point, while taking on a serious, larger amount of responsibilities along with that role. Now, what happens is, here's some of the mistakes that happen along the way. Yes, is you don't actually proactively discuss your compensation when you take on these new responsibilities or when you're given these new responsibilities, just assuming, hey, you know what? That raise or the salary compensation that goes with it, that will happen. You may also have avoided doing any kind of market research into the value of your role and the responsibility as total package within your industry and within the marketplace that you're finding yourself in. And this I find so often as well is you're downplaying the contributions and the value that you bring and the impact that this is delivered to the company, which in turn actually leads to your leaders also undervaluing that contribution, of saying it's like, oh, it's not really any big deal, or, oh, you know what, Kim she really enjoyed that. So, and this was, then it's a great thing that she did there, right? Without considering, hey, wait a minute, we've given her more work to do. She's taken on more responsibility. We also need to compensate that as well. Now, some things you might already been trying to do, but aren't actually getting you that salary compensation that you're looking for, which leaves you in this position of like, I'm not being recognized, I'm getting frustrated, right? Is you state to your managers, your boss, listen, I want to be valued in my work. But then you don't articulate clearly what that should look like, and that there should be a specific tangible amount that should be reflected back in your compensation and your salary package. So if you're not being clear about this, and I had this conversation with a client yesterday, it was like, well, I've spoken out about the fact that I want to be recognized. I want to be valued for the work that I'm doing. It's like, well, have you talked about salary? Well, it's just not on the table. Okay. When we're not specific and we're not clearly articulating what it is that we want, what it is that you want, then you're leaving it up to the interpretation of somebody else. So if you're saying, I want to be I want to be valued as a leader and as an employee of this organization, that other person or the leaders might interpret that as like, okay, well, we need to value them more. So give them an extra couple claps in the back, like, hey, you're doing a great job, right? That's also still a way of valuing someone, but it's not coming back in the way that you want it to come back to you in. You want it to be specifically in your salary. So, and another mistake that I've often seen, you might not even know this, that's compounding the problem, is actually taking on even more work. So if you're finding yourself like, okay, well, I took on this responsibility and yet I still didn't get the salary raise, so I must need to take on more work in an effort to demonstrate that I am valuable and that I make a big contribution and that I should be valued. And so you hope that it's going to lead to a raise while never actually explicitly asking for that raise. So if that's the situation you're finding yourself in, then today we're going to unpack that, unravel that, so that whether or not you're going into a new role in a new company or you are looking at negotiating your salary in your current role, you can use these steps for yourself. So what is the first thing that I suggest that you do? Okay, so one of the first parts of this is really for you getting very clear for yourself first as to what is the value that you contribute to your organization. What is the contribution, not in terms of hours, but in terms of impact, in terms of value that you bring? So is it if you're in a sales, is it that you're leading a team and you're consistently hitting your targets, which means you're bringing in X amount of revenue? If you are more into an operational side of it, is it the value in leading your teams on specific initiatives in terms of operational efficiency? Is it that you are setting out new strategies that are bringing in either new business opportunities that are bringing in is working towards future-proofing your organization, etc.? I want you to avoid thinking in terms of like, well, I'm working 40, 60, 70 hours in a week, so therefore I should be compensated for those hours. Not really. Your value needs to be linked, or but your salary is more going to be linked to the value that you're bringing to the organization, not the hours that you're working. So start collecting the evidence for that, both for yourself as well as so that you can present that evidence in the conversations and when it comes to your salary. And a big no-no, just to share this up front, is don't start the salary conversation around, well, hey, you know what? Like my expenses are going up and I can't pay the bills, or you know what? I want to take an extra holiday. And so I need to earn a little bit more money. Those aren't reasons for a organization, a company, or a business. And most of you know this, that would lead to a going, oh, all right, well, if you're having that, well, let's just give you a raise. No, you, again, first step is to completely relate it to the contribution and the actual value that you are delivering to that organization. So that's step number one. Get clear on your value. And I know in previous rounds, I've talked about the achievement radar, and that's how you can track all of your achievements, your results, etc. If you're curious about that, just drop achievement radar in the comments and I will get you a link to that training. Now, number two is going to be all about doing your market research. Don't simply look, because here's another mistake that I often see is we're like, okay, well, I'm in this role. This is the salary scale level that I'm at. And oftentimes, a lot of the clients I work with, they're at the top of the scale. So that's it. I can't ask for a raise because I'm already at the top of the scale. All right. So let's start doing some market research. Look around. What are the industry standards for the role that you have with the responsibilities. Now, you may not find exact matches, and that's okay. But in general, you can see an overview in terms of, all right, in this type of marketing role, in this type of HR role, in this type of sales director role, these are pretty standard or even the best practices when it comes to compensation for those types of roles. Now, and then you want to compare that, of course, to your own position and realize, think for yourself, because there's an underlying part here when we think about, oh, I want to ask for a raise, that it's like, well, do I really need another raise? Not really, because I'm doing great how I'm doing right now with my salary. I can do everything that I want. Well, that is also not a reason to discount a salary request from yourself, right? Because you're taking yourself out of the running. So doing that market research allows you to gain a different perspective in terms of, are you being, I don't want to say realistic, but is there a possibility, if you were to go externally, that your salary would be looking different than it would be if you were to stay with the organization? Because it gives you another data point, another information in order to strengthen the argument, whether you're in your current role, or let's say if you are going to go and you're already in past the phase of like, hey, we'd love to have you here, and you're now in that salary negotiation part when it comes to accepting a new role, is it gives you a data point to work from. Okay. Now, I want you to consider, at times there's a couple different strategies, right? You could say, well, I want to be within this type of range when it comes to my salary. Now, that is really a great way to approach it when you're looking at a role in a new role, new organization. When you're looking internally in your own company and you're renegotiating your salary, I would strongly suggest pick a number, state a number. This is where I want my salary to be at. Now, in order to create that momentum, you also want to ensure that you are framing how you ask for that in a way that is a win-win for both of you. Because oftentimes you might look at a negotiation, and I've had this in the past. A lot of my clients have this as well. It's like, well, if I negotiate for more salary, that means that, they're not going to be happy about it. So it's a lose for them and it's a win for me. But here's a perspective. If you continue to be frustrated and unhappy in your work, how is that a win for your company? Because you didn't ask for the raise, but you're still unhappy. Doesn't really seem to be a win-win. So if you were to start looking at the negotiating your salary as being a win-win, that you are well compensated and you're happy with the compensation that you get, as well as the company being really pleased with the work and the contribution that you're creating, the value that you're bringing, then it's a win-win. It doesn't need to be contentious. And that's how we've often framed it in our mind. This is going to be a very contentious, it's going to be a confrontational type of conversation. Ooh, we don't really want to talk about money. And that's where I also want to go a little bit deeper into what I just highlighted briefly before that, is around this thought, because I've had at least 3 of my one-on-one clients mention this to me in the last couple of weeks. So then if this is coming up for my one-on-one clients, it's also coming up in my group coaching program, then I know it's something that's going around for a lot of you out there as well. And if you're watching this, as always, just drop comments or DM me if you want to go deeper on this. Personally, of course, you can always DM me as well. Is around this topic of like, well, but Kim, I don't really need more money. So why would I negotiate for more money? And this is a question. It's a great question. I mean, yeah, it's a good excuse to stay comfortable and just to kind of go, okay, I can avoid that conversation. But just to think about for a second, is there things that you could be doing that if you had that money or you had an additional salary that you would love to do? Maybe it is taking an extra holiday, or maybe taking a more luxurious holiday. Maybe it has to do with you've got a passion project that you have. Maybe it is being able to contribute to your charities more. So, just consider the fact that there are other options with that money that you could be doing, that even if you're really happy with where you are right now, it doesn't mean that you can't find ways of increasing your impact through adding additional salary for yourself. And another piece of this, which I see a lot of women have, is we have this equation of like, well, my salary equals my worth. And we need to take that apart, because I always say this to each one and every one of my clients. No company on this earth will ever be able to pay you the salary that is equal to your worth. You're worth more than your salary. However, the contribution that you and the value that you bring to a company and an organization, that can be linked to a salary. So if your salary is disproportionately smaller to the value that you're bringing to the organization, there is an imbalance there, which is going to lead to dissatisfaction, most likely on your part. And there's going to be this frustration of like, all right, I'm taking on more responsibilities, I'm doing more work, I'm spending a lot more time. And what you're going to see is over time is this resentment is going to build up. And then the question becomes, who was really the winner here? No one, because you're not satisfied at work, but you're not asking and really clearly articulating that you want to be valued also with additional salary, and your company is going to lose out in the long run because you're not going to stay there. And likely you're not going to stay there. You're eventually going to find something different. And this happens because you're avoiding articulating, you're avoiding asking for the salary compensation that you want. So let's go through the steps right now. Step number 1 is about taking stock, taking the inventory of your value so that you know for yourself, and that you could also use this in your conversations. Number 2 is to do your market research. Understand what your position with your responsibilities, what that role, how that compensation looks like, what salary expectations are like within the industry, or what are best practices within your region. Number 3, now this was a bit split, right? So on one hand, for those of you that are going into a new role, into a new company, this you could give a salary indication, like a range. Still be fairly specific in that range. Don't make it a huge range, but make it very specific in the range that you want it to be at. And I would suggest make it a little higher so that you have room to negotiate down. And if you're in a role already within your company, get very specific on this is the salary compensation that I want to see. And again, you can bump up just a little bit so that you have some negotiation room to come down, where both you and your organization feels like you've come out with a win. Now, number 4 is you really want to take all of that information, your market research, all of the value and contributions that you have made, and leverage that in your conversation. Start showcasing like, these are the values that I've been given. This is the value that I have contributed. So I have added X amount to the top line. I have ensured that the margins were increased by X, Y, and Z, so that it becomes a no-brainer. So you're building your business case like you would make a business case for any one of your ideas or proposals. Make a business case as to why giving you, or giving you is one way to put it, but increasing your salary is a no-brainer. And number 5 is going to be about make sure that you time this right. So don't this is the really great time, right? So if you're considering this right now, we're getting towards the end of the year. Performance reviews, I know everyone's starting to do them. I hear that from different clients as well. So if you're in that point, this can be starting to be really great time to start having that conversation around, all right, so these are the additional responsibilities I've taken on this year. This is also the additional value and contribution that I've made. So let's talk about the compensation, because when I'm reflecting on the amount of work that I've been doing, the value that I've been delivering, as well as what I'm seeing in the marketplace, then there's a mismatch at this point in time. So this is where I'd like to go towards. How can we get there? Right? So I want to just kind of leave it there because I don't want to go too far into depth, but wanted to give you at least a few of the view steps. First, man, short circuiting here in my brain today. So let's go through this again. When we talk about how to negotiate a higher salary for you, you want to first of all talk about the value that you're going to be bringing. Make sure you have an inventory for yourself so that you feel that you already add value. If you don't feel it, it's going to come off wishy-washy when you go to ask for it. So make sure you have a very clear inventory of the valued achievements that you have contributed to the organization. Number 2, I want you to do your market research. Understand what your role and your responsibilities, what that looks like externally. I'm not saying that you have to necessarily go and apply externally, but at least understand in the marketplace, what would your skill set, what would your responsibilities, what would your role be valued at? In terms of if you're in a position already in a company, you want to stay there, make sure you go to a specific number. Give them a specific number where you want to see your salary compensated at. Or if you're applying for a role and you're in that negotiation phase, then you can give a range. Again, don't make it a big range. Make it very specific in terms of, I want to see it within this range, which for you are happy to accept the lower number when it comes to that. Okay. And number 4, make sure that you highlight all of this, bring that all together, all of the value, your market research, the contributions, and create that business case for why you should be given a salary increase, or you should be given that salary that you're asking for in a new role. That is building that business case right then and there. And you want to time it. So this right now is a great time of year to time it, because you can link it also with your conversations around your performance review. What are your next steps and looking at 2024? So I want to invite you, because I know there will be questions. There always is questions on this topic. And you might not want to ask your question in the comments below. So if that's the case, don't worry. I want you to join me on Friday at 2 p.m. Central European Time or 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I'm going to be doing a LinkedIn Live audio, so a LinkedIn audio event. And in that audio event, I want you can come and ask me any questions. You can jump on and ask me questions. We can talk about your specific situation, or we can go dive deeper into one of those steps along the way. So thank you so much. Again, as always, drop a comment below, if you have any questions. And I would also love to hear from you. If you want to go into this deeper and not wait till Friday, I'm going to give you a special opportunity to do that. Just comment audit, and you can get into a leadership audit call with me. And it's a 30-minute complimentary call. I've got a few spots open left this week, and we can go through, well, how do I approach this for your specific situation in terms of your salary and getting your salary achieved as well. All right. Thank you so much for listening. As always, drop your comments in the comments below or above, wherever it is on the platform that you're watching from, or feel free to ask any questions and slide into my DMs and ask me there. And I will see you all on Friday again. You can ask me your questions on the LinkedIn audio event on Friday, again at 2 p.m. Central European Time and 8 a.m. Eastern Time. Thank you so much for joining.